back to the Bites and Bytes Podcast. I am your host, Kristin Demoranville, and today, buckle up, we're heading straight into the messy, brilliant, tech-laced world of food startups. My guest is Camille Hardy, founder of Chunky Vegan, and someone who's not just building a company by flipping the script on what early nutrition and operational resilience looks like in the food space. We're talking clean ingredients, complex logistics, startup chaos, glass jars that don't leach chemicals. Oh yeah, and why cybersecurity matters even in baby food. No, seriously. This episode is a crash course in what it takes to build something that feeds people, respects the planet, and survives modern supply chains. Let's get into it. Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have our next guest on the show. But before we go into introductions and everything else good like that, we're going to start with favorite food and favorite food memory. They do not need to be the same thing.
A favorite food is all summer fruits. I love all summer fruits. You name it, I love it. It just is nostalgic, period.
So we're talking like strawberries and raspberries, that kind of, or
strawberries,
anything
raspberries,
like
cherries,
watermelon,
nectarines, yeah.
Oh, all the things. So like full-on harvest summer fruit.
Yes, I love it.
Sounds good. Since we're recording in winter, that actually sounds really good right now. And favorite food memory, is that attached to summer fruits?
Actually, I think it is because in the summers, I'm from New York, and I would spend the summers with my grandmother. We moved, my father moved us to California. And so we would come back home to New York for 2 weeks, and I would be with my grandmother. And so it's kind of associated with me having that time with her. And yeah, she loved it. She gave us fresh fruit all the time. And so that's what I associate. That's why it's my favorite. Mm-hmm.
Did you go out and pick any of it? Did she take you out when you were kids and go like pick strawberries or any of that stuff?
Yes. Well, my great grandmother had like fresh raspberry or wild raspberries and berries in her yard. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we would be able to go out and just at will, just go right out and grab some fresh fruit. So, and you could smell, she had mint, and you would smell all those scents in the air. I loved it.
I love it when you went by someone who had an herb garden, like their front yard, or you could just, when you're a kid and you just were like, what's this? Is that like spearmint? And then you of course grab it and put it in your hand and sniff it. And lavender too. I always used to grab lavender. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. It's sad as a society, we don't really do gardens as much as we used to, I feel like. I mean, with the pandemic, I think that picked up, but I just remember there being so many more when I was a kid, and
they absolutely were
berry bushes and more, you just walk into someone's backyard kind of and take an apple. Not that I'm recommending you steal anything, anybody, but I'm just saying like it was more prevalent and abundant. Yeah,
we could totally just be out in the neighborhood all day and eat off of the trees from our neighbors and pick berries and honeysuckle, like just all throughout. Just a summer day, not really having to come home and grab anything to eat.
Yeah, we had there was walnut trees on one of the properties I lived in, and they would harvest those and chestnuts and all these things. I remember there being so much food around us at all times, and now I just feel like there just isn't, which is nowhere tragic
to be found. Exactly, right? Nowhere to be found.
Yeah. And also, I mean, with the global climate change, of course, you can grow citrus in certain states now that you couldn't grow before, which I find to be very wild. But I don't really want to have to bring in like a lemon tree in the winter. Like, what am I going to do with it inside? Like, that's a lot of work, right? And maybe that's why we don't have those things anymore, because they do take work. And before, I felt like nature kind of took care of it in certain places, because I grew up in New England. So a very similar story, that raspberry bushes, blueberries, they were just kind of abundant everywhere. And as long as you washed them and you were okay with it, careful with it was fine. But also, we're probably both from the same generation that drank out of like water hoses on the side of the house.
Absolutely.
So, last feral generations, we just did things that were kind of crazy that I don't think people would do these days. That's great. I am totally going to get some fruit when I get off this particular podcast here, because I'm like salivating just thinking about it. Go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
My name is Camille Hardy. I am the founder of Chunky Vegan. At Chunky Vegan, we are a farm-to-table organic baby food company, or infant and toddler food company. We source our food directly from farms so that we can provide a farm fresh, nutrient-dense meal options for infants and toddlers.
That's great. And we met because we were both finalists in an innovation challenge in the county that we were in. And
we did.
And your speech when you were talking was just the fact that you were doing research with different universities about nutrients. And it just really spoke to me. And I was like, oh, we need to have her on the show, because I want to talk about what it means to own a food company And I realized that this is a little bit different than the normal set of technology professionals I have on the podcast. But I think it's really important in order to serve an industry, as any type of aspect of it, you need to understand what it takes to create one. So that's why I'm having this particularly wonderful guest on. We've already had a great conversation before I hit record.
We did.
But will you tell me why you started Chunky Vegan? Because I do know the story a little bit, but just for the audience sake.
Absolutely. It started when my son, when he transitioned to eating solid foods, I remember I would stand in the grocery aisle frustrated, reading labels on the baby food jar. Everything was shelf stable or processed or, filled with some sort of preservative. I wanted something different. I wanted something fresh. That's what I'm used to. That's not something that I was interested in feeding my son. We're talking about expiration dates of 2 years beyond that date, and it had an organic stamp on the bottom jar, this is an oxymoron. So I'm just not understanding how this is able to float and get by. And these are the offerings that we're offering our early stage eaters. They're coming out of the gate, and this is what we're offering. And so that was a light bulb moment for me, because I was struggling to find high quality food. And that's when I started to source food. And initially it started from the grocery stores. And then I'm saying, wait a minute, where are they getting this stuff from? I don't know how it's treated. And being in Virginia, I'm surrounded by farms. So I started tapping into those farmers and just going down a rabbit hole, if you will, and saying, well, how are you treating your produce? And then they would say it was chemically treated or not. So then I would narrow down that list, and eventually got to a point where I was able to identify a few farmers that were organic farmers, Amish, or just without any chemicals that they were using to treat their food. And then I started to use that to cook my son meals. And it just evolved as I started doing that. I would have leftovers or extra that I would give some other parents that were running into the same issues. They really liked it. They started tapping in. I'm like, well, wait a minute. I didn't say I was a meal prep service. I was just offering this, as something, for your child to try. Then I started realizing that there was a true demand and that there was a gap in this area of pediatric nutrition. So that just is what prompted me to really delve into this a little bit more.
That's great. I love it that there's a personal story. It wasn't like you just saw a niche in the market, like a market niche that wasn't being served in terms of like profit, but you actually wanted to do it for the betterment of family.
Absolutely.
I think that's a great start to a founder as well. We have to be more intentional, I think, as founders, rather than just like, oh, I want to make this investment and do this really cool thing because it's going to make me money. I feel like that's just, you disengage from your audience anyways immediately by saying that. So I think that's great. And when you told your story before, I was really touched by it because, you have to think about that. We think about it differently now because, we were discussing when we were kids that everything was fresh for the most part for us. Exactly. We didn't really either came out of my great grandparents' garden or one of the farmers markets, or we grew it. If it came from the grocery store, we weren't really super worried about pesticides or anything like that, or any type of chemicals being used on it. There wasn't huge factory farms at that point. They were up and coming, but they weren't quite there yet. And now it's, no seasons in the grocery store and everything's got preservatives in it and things you wouldn't even think about have all kinds of crazy things in it. And I'm not going down this whole like conspiracy theorist thing about how you should eat. You eat however you want. If you want to drink raw milk, go for it. If you don't, you don't. If you don't want to eat meat, don't eat meat. We're not here to push veganism on anybody either.
No, not at all. We don't push that as a vegan company. It's just to say that we've done the research to make sure that this option is well-rounded. So if you chose, you can use this as a side to a meat entree, but if you chose not to introduce any meat or dairy, that you can get a well-balanced vegan meal. So we're not staunch veganists by any means, right? So yes. It's just to say we really want to provide this option for those who we don't really have many vegan options, one, and two, if you chose to introduce that, you very well could in a way that you can get everything that you needed to get without having to introduce meat or dairy.
Mm-hmm. Which is great because he said sometimes the vegan options aren't actually healthy at all.
Exactly.
It could be a lot of processed whatever, or
absolutely.
And I'm not picking on pea protein. There's, that's fine, but it's in a lot of things now with vegan food, and it's a little questionable if it's okay. And I should be really candid with the audience that's listening. I actually went vegan for 3 years, and it was an interesting journey, but I'll tell you, it was a lot of processed food.
Yeah.
I felt better in some ways and not in others, but whenever you eat just regular straight up vegetables, always feel really good. But it doesn't mean that I definitely still eat meat now and fish. It's part of my life now. But I have a healthy respect for people who are trying to live a different lifestyle in that regard, because it's actually really hard to get and to work with the food that's out there in the supermarkets. And I really, again, applaud what you're trying to do, especially when it comes to, we should call them early stage eaters. Early stage eaters. Sorry, I need to be correct, because you actually can't call almond milk. You have to call it plant-based beverage. I had another guest who corrected me on that you cannot say milk because milk comes from an animal. And I went, okay. And I don't want to insult the dairy industry because I do work with them too. But that's so interesting. So I guess the other thing is you started a company, and it started very organically, and pun intended, I suppose. Hi, we're Ands and Sage. And if you're in food production, agriculture, and even running a zoo or an aquarium, we need to talk. Because let's be honest, your operation relies on a lot more technology than most people realize. Grain dryers, hatchery controls, life support systems for animal habitats, all connected, all critical, all often overlooked when it comes to cybersecurity. That's where we come in. At Ands and Sage, we help industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. Without the fear tactics, the fluff, or the 200-page audit you'll never read. Whether you're producing milk, processing seafood, or running life support systems, we focus on what matters, keeping your operations safe, your people protected, and your business running, even when things go sideways. And hey, we know not everyone on your team speaks cyber. And because not everyone on your team speaks cyber, we've created a free resource library at andsandsage.com. Inside, you'll find sector-specific infographics built for teams in agriculture, seafood, zoos, and aquariums. They're clear, practical, a little witty, and designed to help frontline teams understand the risks without needing a translator. No logins, no email required, no catch, just usable tools that make cybersecurity stick. If you're responsible for keeping food moving, animals safe, and systems online, Ands and Sage is your partner in real-world resilience. Visit andsandsage.com to download your free infographics, book a consult, or just learn more about how we're helping critical infrastructures secure what matters most. Ands and Sage, helping the industries that grow, feed, and inspire the world manage cybersecurity and operational risks. People who are listening are a lot of technology people, a lot of operational technology people, and a lot of other different types of parts of the industry, but they don't probably have the understanding of what it means to start a food business and the complexities of it. So what were your biggest hurdles when you started Chunky Vegan? We can go through any part of that you want.
That's a very broad question.
Yeah, that's why I said whatever you want to start with.
Yeah. Producing fresh food is difficult. It's hard. It's not shelf stable. And so we have to make sure that we take certain measures to make sure that we can preserve it, refrigerate it, or freeze it, and keep it as pristine as possible until it reaches it, so that it can reach the destination, so it can reach the consumer. Mm-hmm. And so because we are not a highly shelf stable we don't have a highly shelf-stable product, just making sure we're against time. So when we get our food from the farm, we have to instantly start preparing, and we have to get it to the point of cold press processing where, we freeze it, refrigerate it, or get it to a point where we can stop that that aging time, timer. If you will. And then I would say that's one thing. So dealing with highly perishable items is one complexity. The other would be navigating the food safety regulations. So just in general, navigating that is difficult. But when you're doing that for a high risk demographic like infants and toddlers, it becomes there's even more red tape to kind of get through to make sure that we are adhering and we are compliant with all of the food regulations. We have also held ourselves to an even higher standard. So we go beyond the U.S. Food regulation standards. Our Chunky Vegan is held to the UK standards.
Yep.
So they don't allow a lot of things that the U.S. does. And so because of that, we are held to making sure that we are compliant in a lot of different areas. And so that is a huge hurdle to have to kind of deal with. And packaging is another. Glass jars is what we use. We refrain from using any plastics or any materials like that. We are trying to be sustainable. It is a sustainability win. However, it's hard to source affordably here in the U.S. So that's been another hurdle, just finding a manufacturer domestically where we can keep our costs, reasonably low.
Yeah. And I'm sure that will be interesting depending on how things continue to move forward with relations within different places in the world with items such as glass, for example. I really am glad to hear that you're following the UK standards, by the way, because technically that means you're in compliance with EU because it's very similar. I have a lot of food safety people that are here, as well as food defense. Yes. And I've heard stories about the infant and toddler situation in general with it because of the formula issues, it's become more on the radar, if you will, and for good and bad reasons, of course. But yeah, food safety is interesting. And I've realized in my career that food safety is really closely tied to cybersecurity because anything that technology wise that touches food is a food safety issue. And we touch a lot of food production, of course. And so I've really gotten to love those teams because they're fighting the same fight in a way.
Yes.
So that's super interesting. And then logistics wise and distribution wise, I'm sure that's also difficult because you have to transport in cold storage or frozen.
Absolutely. Yes.
And that's complicated. And depending on how big the business eventually gets, which it will, that's going to be an interesting thing because transports for cold storage are all connected with the internet. They're all IoT. And it's really fascinating how that works as well on like a totally geek out, like industrial moment. It's cool. But that is something that's really interesting. Cause again, people just probably think, oh, I'm going to start a food company. I'm just going to make grandma's cookies or whatever. And it's not as easy as people think it is. It's difficult. And probably at first it sounded like it was started a little bit almost like a catering situation. And then it transferred into, I'm going to start this company that's going to produce this product. And because you were sharing it with your friends and family for a bit. And now, now it's you are a CEO of a food company first of all, I applaud you because I know because I'm in the food industry, I know how difficult this job is. And the criticism and I'm sure just from your name alone, people are like, wait, what? and then to hear it's baby food and then people get weirded out and have an opinion about that. And you're just like, no, it's not like that. It's providing nutrient-dense situations to people who couldn't have it necessarily before. And we were talking off air when we were doing the pre-interview that this could even go beyond to people that are critically ill or people that are about to transition and pass into the next life, those kind of things. Because I've just lost all my elders and I was thinking that, they didn't really get to eat too much towards the end because there wasn't food they could really chew. And
correct.
There's a part of me that wished I could have just shipped up some Chunky Vegan to them, but it was out of state, obviously. But I thought, what a great way to give people dignity towards the end, that they could have some food that's good for them, that tastes good, and be able to, not just chew on ice chips. I mean, if that's the stage you're at, I understand. There needs to be more consideration for that, as well as obviously the early stage eaters.
We've received a lot of interest in that space as well for seniors. And that is going to be another phase that we offer down the line. And another part of my story is that when I was preparing these meals for my son, my husband's grandmother at the time, she was dealing with Alzheimer's and dementia. And so I literally started feeding her what I fed him. And it was absolutely something she could consume and she liked it. And so we were able to get her to eat more because it wasn't, feeding her table food. She just didn't want it. It's gentle enough on the stomach. So, I mean, it did allow her to have that level, I think, of dignity. And she was able to get the nutrients that she needed. And we weren't just shoving her in Sure, trying to get her to replace not eating, being able to chew her food. So she was able to kind of have those other options available to her.
It's interesting too, because I read or watched, it was a video from the BBC, and I think it was a few years old, but I watched it recently. It was talking about how the food that we eat nowadays is actually really soft compared to the way it used to be. And I was like, wait, what? And apparently that's part of like the marketing of how do we get people to eat food and more sugar kind of thing, because we make it softer and easier for them to chew. And I just was like, whoa, wait, hold up. And like it explained a lot, because I remember crunching carrots when I was a kid. I think we basically just eat all cooked carrots now as adults. We don't really, I mean, if you have raw carrots, good for you. And generally speaking, because we're so worried about different, E. coli, salmonella, listeria, we have to cook our vegetables most of the time now. And I thought, wow, that was a snack really gone
for me.
Oh, I love carrots. Yeah, I think they're the best, actually. I probably overindulge in them at times, which is not good on the stomach. Just, heads up for everybody. But, or I went through a cucumber phase this past summer. I don't know. You just go through phases of vegetables for some reason. Yeah. Or cauliflower. My sister teases me that I eat cauliflower too much. Cauliflower is great.
Yeah,
I guess so. I didn't think I ate it much, but I think cauliflower is great. I think it goes with everything. You can change it up. The flavors exist in whatever you're making. One of my favorite things today is roasted cauliflower tacos. I mean, I think that's the best thing ever. But anyways, this is just me. This is not my favorite food or favorite food memory, because I've never said it on air. So I should be clear on that. But I do enjoy cauliflower tacos. Anyways, you were talking about food safety and all the things that are going on. Obviously, there's been a lot of like food recalls, right? So like spinach, we can say as an example. I still look at spinach with a bit of a side eye, because
romaine lettuce.
Yeah, and lettuce, right? Mm-hmm. Are you doing anything to counterbalance that in best you can? I realize that you're sourcing in the best way you can. Are you looking for farms that don't have the cattle pastures that are close by to where they grow their leafy greens, not their green leafies?
Literally every farm that we partner with, I've met the farmers. I walk the farms. I look at the practices. I'm there. I'm boots on the ground, because I need to know. I know them by name. We have a personal relationship. A lot of the Amish farmers, they farm in that way. So if they are doing fruits and vegetables, they will have a whole, pasture of just vegetables and leafy greens. You won't see the animals in those spaces, and then also in addition to that, we have to test. We have to do a lot of testing. Everything that we get from the farms, we have to label it by batch so that we can trace. There's some traceability there. And then we have to do batch testing. And again, I don't want, I know I can't, there's not a surefire way for me to catch everything. But as much as I possibly can, I don't ever want to get a call about ill reaction to our food. So that would just devastate me, because the whole purpose of why I created this company was for the exact opposite. I'm so very diligent, just about, almost to the extent of, driving my team crazy, just about making sure we're tested. We make sure that we're testing everything. We're validating everything. Our cleaning processes are, very stringent. I don't feel like we can overcompensate in those areas. I would rather err on the side of caution to make sure that we're providing the cleanest, most or purest option that we can. Like even the water we use is very specific, and I'm very intentional. We use reverse osmosis water to clean and to cook with all of our fruits and vegetables, because that is the purest form of water that we can have access to. So there is intention in everything. So my company was derived on a mission. Mm-hmm. And so this mission is what fuels my passion. And so I am hoping that it can, the result of that will be seen in our consumers that try our food, eat our food, and that grow up on our food. I hope it helps with not having exposure to ailments and food allergies and all of these things that kids are dealing with these days.
Hey, quick pause. You're still with me, and I know you are. First, thanks. You're awesome. If this episode's making you think, laugh, or question your pantry choices, hit that like button, share with a friend, drop a review, or just text someone and say, you gotta hear this one. All of it helps more people find these conversations. All forms of engagement are welcome. And my cat also agrees. Seriously, your support keeps the wheels turning and the guests coming. All right, let's get back to it. Yes, I thank you for sharing all that. I think that's fantastic. And I'm sure the food security people that are listening were like, yes, someone who cares, a founder who cares, because there's plenty of examples in the media and research that are now being taught in collegiate level of founders and owners who did not care. And a lot of people paid the price for that. And so I'm sure everybody just stood up and clapped a little bit there that understands. And I certainly was trying not to clap, but I was very happy to hear that. With your testing, are you using any technology to test, or are you just doing it like the old fashioned lab way?
So we have our testers. It's just pretty much the old fashioned lab way.
Yeah, that's fine.
But I know that we have to we're going in the direction, and some of our scientists and Virginia Tech, the team there, I don't know all of the technologies that they are or will be using, but as far as I'm aware, it's pretty much the old-fashioned way of testing. I send in samples and they evaluate all the samples that are being tested. And then we also are starting to get some test kits as well, just to test for trace chemicals that come up in our food.
It's a whole other type of testing that's kind of terrifying, actually, if you think about it, because the fact that we have to test for that seems really kind of weird, right? That we shouldn't have to test for like heavy metals and other things like that.
So even down to the glass, because certain glass is made, it has levels of lead. So you have to, it's not just using any glass. You have to be particular about the type of glass you use. So there are like beaker grade glasses, and they're just like some low soda lime glass, which does have trace levels of lead. So just being educated on all of those things, it doesn't make sense to take all of these measures to make sure the food is a certain way and then put it in a package that could reintroduce certain things that we're trying to eliminate, right? Mm-hmm. So it's a lot of the manufacturers in the US use soda lime glass, which does contain levels of lead, but they said the FDA deemed them safe levels of lead. We don't. Yeah, that's a whole other conversation.
I was going to say, that's crazy. And did you ever think that you were going to be a glass expert in your life?
Absolutely not. Like that came with, I had no clue. Yeah, no. This is just all part of the nonsense of it all.
That's so much. Wow. That's crazy. And wow, that just actually blew my mind, because I never thought about the components of glass and if it's food safe. But I mean, obviously, now I'm wondering if any of my glass downstairs is safe. Actually, to be honest, like any containers that I've ever bought, they were glass or plexiglass or something like that. That's wow. Okay. I hope listeners just also had their mind blown, because I'm definitely like, wait a minute, should I reevaluate everything in my cabinet?
Because there's certain glass that they use for makeup. You can't use that for food. You can't use that same glass to put your food in. It's not food grade safe. So there's a lot of different levels of glass.
And this is why starting a food company is such a feat in itself, because now you have to learn things you never thought you needed to learn before. Wow. Okay. That's a lot. That is
a lot of expenses that go with that. Right.
Oh, so sure.
The soda lime glass is cheaper, so I can get tons of that for cheap, but I don't choose to. I'm choosing to use something called borosilicate glass. That's like beaker grade glass.
Okay.
So yeah, again, maybe a different conversation for another podcast, but yes.
Wow, that's crazy. And then how big are your jars, just out of curiosity, so people know like what
6
we're looking at here?
Yeah, we decided to launch with 6 ounces. We could get like 2, 4, and 6 ounce sizes, but I just wanted to start with one size just so that it can be easier for my SKU process as I'm coming out of the gate. But yeah, we're 6 ounces.
You actually mentioned a little bit about how you know that you're going to have to head towards technology at some point, probably with, if you already do online ordering, I believe, on the website. Yeah. So that's already one piece of technology. So you have e-commerce, and then distribution wise, you're probably going to have some type of a tracking system. So you know where your packages are moving and running, if you don't already, probably. And then obviously whatever carrier you use, they're already using technology. Actually, yesterday I was signing for a package, and it dawned on me that they put the little tablet for it, and you just sign and it's just the way life is now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Back in the day, you had to like sign the piece of paper that they had in their hand on a clipboard, and we don't do that anymore. I'm sure they can I hope they can roll back to that if they had to, but it's just how much technology has like invaded our lives to the point we don't even realize it's happening now. But I wanted you to talk a little bit about your thoughts and feelings around bringing tech into your company at some point, whether that's AI or more type of online e-commerce, or where do you see that going for Chunky Vegan, just in general?
I absolutely, we already are using AI to a certain extent. And I think I want to delve deeper into that so that we can use that to help us predict ingredient shortages, and optimize our production schedules, and even suggest new recipes, based on the nutritional needs. It's also something I'd like to integrate into our website. It can help us, maybe you can put in some data about your child, and it will help you either customize a meal, give you some meal suggestions for your child. So there's a lot of opportunity that we have where I see that we can definitely incorporate more technology, AI technology, into our operation.
That's awesome. And I love that you're thinking already about like a little chat bot for the website that kind of gives you like, here's just a quick little whatever, and then it will pop up and give you some information. I think that's going to be the start of everyone's customer service from now on moving forward. I think we'll be using these little quick chat bots, and then it will eventually take you to somebody if you need to talk to a person. But I think that's brilliant that you're going to use that. And production scheduling and ingredients, I completely get that. My mind was spinning. I'm like, oh, there's so many things you can do. And I'm sure some people that are in the food industry, that are manufacturing, they're eventually thinking about ERP systems and other things like that. That's down the line for you, not right now. That'd be kind of absurd if you did an ERP at the moment. But that's good that you're embracing AI, because I think a lot of people are afraid of it. And in talking to other companies that help food startups and they embrace AI, and somebody recently said, food startup doesn't embrace AI now, they're not going to get ahead in the industry, because it's going to be the predominant way that we get customer data, that we understand trends in the market, people's flavor profiles, refrigerators are tracking us. Our food apps track us. If you order food from like Instacart or DoorDash or Uber Eats, you're being tracked. Trust and believe your data is being tracked. So all of this. And you do e-commerce. So let's quickly just jump into customer privacy. I'm not a privacy expert, but I understand enough. And I think a lot of people who are listening are as well. You're obviously collecting data from your customers, and you obviously have agreements with, that you have on your website that say like, we're obviously not selling your data and we're being really cautious with you and that kind of stuff. Why don't you talk a little bit about that as a founder? Because that's another set of things that you probably had to learn as well, of how do we keep customer data safe while they purchase our product?
Just our cybersecurity protection.
Sure.
Yeah. So of course, yes, that's just another layer of things that I need to make sure that, it's a liability that we have to make sure that we have a strategy and plan in place to protect data. And so our customer data is encrypted, and payments go through like a third party platform. And we actively monitor that for fraud. So we are definitely aware of the sensitivities around exposure and putting our customers at risk. And so we're just making sure that I partner with cybersecurity companies to ensure that we can protect that data. So that's high on my radar. I don't want to breach. We're way too small to be encountering those types of things. So, and I think because we are small, it's manageable. It's easy for us to kind of have a better hold on making sure that we can protect the data.
But small businesses are just agile.
We're just as vulnerable to cyber threats as big corporations are. So, we do have to have an awareness and, some strategies in place to make sure that we are protected. So I would definitely advise. I don't think a lot of small businesses don't consider those things because they don't feel like they are at a point. But whenever you are exposing somebody's information, then you are at that point.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised how hackers don't care how big or small you are. If they see a vulnerability, they're going for you. And I don't know if I've shared this on air. I might have shared it on air once, but my company, Anson OT, which is my product, my software product, actually suffered a cyber attack
Okay.
It was a brute force attack. So somebody tried to knock into our software, essentially. Instead of freaking out and thinking it was the worst thing ever, I actually laughed and said, yes, we're a legit company because we're hackable.
Somebody was trying to get something.
Well, it was funny because my partner and I immediately scrambled and did all our due diligence immediately. And they didn't take any of our data. That you could just see that someone tried to take our data. It's interesting because, like I said, we flashed into like security mode immediately and it was taken care of. But thankfully, that's our expertise. But I thought, what if this was somebody who was in a small business who didn't know, and then they didn't know what was happening. And the only reason we knew it was happening is we noticed there was some kind of a adjustment that we didn't do. So, and it was one of those moments where it was just this gut check that even though we're so small and that somebody went for us, and it just was kind of absurd. So it really can happen. It really can.
It really can.
And I think the idea is if you have an attack to stay resilient and functional operationally through it, and then, deal with the fallout as you need to. And I think that's what I'm most worried about with small businesses in general is, will you get through it? And it sounds like you're aware of it to the point where you're like, you know what, we're going to get through it and it's going to be okay, which I love for you. And most people don't have that attitude going into it. It's just kind of like, it hasn't happened to us. We're not that attractive. It's no big deal. But because you're a food company, and in my opinion, makes you more of a target because the damage could go further than the financial. It could go to disruptions with people, could do a lot of damage along the lines of miscuing data for testing. You could send out a product you didn't know it was contaminated. All these things. There's so much more to think about.
A huge effect. Yes.
Yes. And I don't think that bad actors and nation state attacks care. They'll do whatever they got to do to either make the money or cause the problem. So I applaud you for being super diligent already on that, because it's going to serve you in the future. It's not an if it's going to happen, and when it happens, unfortunately.
Yeah. And we do have a failover plan as well. So
business continuity is good.
Yeah.
Love that.
How do we pivot? How do we, we can't knock us completely out. What can we do? Restoring information. What is our plan around that? So I come from a technology or corporate or enterprise-wide background. And so I'm applying those things.
That's great.
Just to have that level of preparation, even though, we're small, but I don't plan for us to be this way for long.
Ever try managing industrial cybersecurity risk with spreadsheets? Yeah, we've been there too. At Anson OT, we're changing the game for OT risk management. No more clunky tools, no more siloed data, just a smarter, faster, and usable way to understand and reduce your risks, whether you're in food production, energy, manufacturing, or anywhere critical infrastructure keeps the world running. Built by folks who've lived the pain, literally conducting OT risk assessments worldwide, Anson OT brings together cybersecurity, safety, environmental, and industry-specific standards in one clear, intuitive platform. We're the first to combine AI-driven insights with scenario-based modeling, so you can not only see your current risk, but also be prepared for what could happen next. And with built-in playbooks, you won't be left scrambling when things go sideways. It's everything industrial cybersecurity management should be: simple, smart, and swift. Learn more at ansonot.com and see why critical infrastructure leaders trust us to help them stay operational, safe, and resilient. Well, that's good. So let's talk about the future of Chunky Vegan. What do we got to look forward to coming up from your team?
What's next? We're working on expanding our product line, like I talked about earlier. Mm-hmm. So we do want to branch out into the senior area, but just overall nutrition as well for people who have gastrointestinal issues. If they can't eat, chew, swallow, it doesn't necessarily have to be for seniors. Also improving our packaging, partnering with local retailers to make sure our meals are even more accessible. So that's in the immediate future. This is what we're currently working on now, just trying to get in a few stores, not trying to, saturate the market, but we want to keep just focus on a boutique health wellness stores. That's where we're starting for now. Mm-hmm. I think those are the immediate future plans.
And I suppose the people that are listening to this particular episode want to know what flavors of food you already have. And I know they can go on the website, but let's just tell them anyways.
Sure. So we have one of our best sellers is our purple Okinawa sweet potato, deriving from Okinawa, Japan. It's just a very simple recipe. And that's like for our, beginner stage eaters, like stage 1. So it's a puree. The consistency is a puree form. The next thing we have, our next bestseller, is our coconut curry lentils. Mostly all of the food is infused with some, like the coconut curry lentils, we infuse that with one of our signature ingredients called a veggie boost. And so that's just to add additional nutrients to the lentils, the quinoa, and some of the hemp seeds that we have in there. It gives them an extra pack of iron and all of these other nutrients that they need. We have a butternut squash and sweet potato option, which is another hit with the youngsters. And we have a black bean and Okinawa sweet potato. And we have a strawberry millet and a peach millet. So a lot of the ingredients that we use, if you're just listening to the ingredients, they are not like typical ingredients. We don't like to really tap into mass produced ingredients because those are the ones that are the heaviest in terms of chemically treated. Even though we source our foods and produce from Amish farms, but we try to steer towards things that are different to create a wider palette for kids in terms of just flavors and tastes and just fresh. So it's the true food, the way it comes, no additives, no preservatives.
And are you planning on expanding your flavor range coming up as well?
Absolutely. So, our food and our flavors are season based. So we, whatever is in peak season, we will be featuring whatever that fruit or that vegetable is at the top of season. So you can maximize the flavor of that in the upcoming season. So there's going to always seasonally be something new that we're going to be introducing. And as we test new flavors, and we do focus groups a lot because that's very important. We probably will be adding in new staples. So the ones that I just talked to you about, those are all of our staple flavors. All right,
I'm assuming you're going to do some summer fruit since it's also your favorite. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I love that you do focus groups as well. That's so important. And that's another thing that it's really interesting and complicated at times too, to get the right people to come in and help test. And when I worked at a food company, it was the employees that tested a lot, which I'm sure you do as well. But I don't ever want to eat frosting ever again. Like I am all set.
That's too much, right?
Or glaze or any type of fruit filling or anything like that because I worked at a bakery company. Okay. And they would give it to you on a saltine cracker. And the only thing you could have was like a little cup of water. And it was just so much sugar that it assaulted you. Literally, your mouth was like, excuse me, this is gross. Like not interested in this. And you had to rate it. There were 3 different frostings and you'd rate which one you liked the best. And ended up being which one did I hate the least is how I usually end up taking it. But I originally, when I first started working there, I was like, oh, this is so cool. I'm going to taste Bavarian cream today. And by the time you get to whatever particular fruit they wanted you to taste at the end of the few years I was there, I was like, I don't know. They'd have to force me in the room. I'm like, I don't want to be here. I can't do this. Yeah. It was not cool. Not cool at all, actually. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah, it was
very interesting.
Yeah, they usually end up just grabbing the new people that they'd end up being the guinea pigs. And all the rest of us who were there for a long time were like, absolutely not. All my interns or anybody who came in on a contract was like, did you try this? I'm like, oh my God, no. And the funny thing is I ran into an old friend of mine who used to work there with me years ago. We were having drinks and he said, I don't eat the cakes anymore. I can't eat cake. I'm done. Just this is homemade. I can't, unless it's homemade, I'm not touching it because it's all the store-bought cakes that we were used to. And I was like, even if I smell that frosting, I'm like, whoa.
Trauma.
Yeah, total trauma. Absolutely not. But this has been so much fun. I really been enjoying this. I feel like I've just got super educated and I love that. Well, as we're leaving, I want to ask you if you could change one thing about the food industry to support small businesses and startups better, and even go beyond that, female owners, what would you suggest?
Well, one of my pain points, it's affordable cold chain shipping. Just trying to get, we don't have we are selling our food right now locally because I haven't found a solution to get the product shipped outside of where we are locally in a reasonable amount of time that's affordable. So in order for us to do that, we have to do expedited shipping. That's one of the biggest barriers of getting fresh food to people. If those costs came down, more small businesses could thrive and our reach would be a lot broader. But right now, that is a limitation that prevents us from other people have access to our food. If there is a way that we can come up with some sort of cost-effective way to streamline that would be amazing for people in this industry and in this business and for small businesses in this industry.
Especially since there's so many cold items that ship. Ice cream ships. You can get pizza shipped. I mean, like there's so many different items that can come in and out, but I never actually thought about the cold storage. It not only has to transport cold, but it has to be stored in a warehouse cold.
Yes.
That's fascinating.
Very expensive process.
Yeah.
Yes.
And especially since, I mean, it's one of those things that in order to grow, you're going to have to do that truthfully. Yes. That's really interesting. So anybody who's on cold storage, start working on that.
I think one solution I came up with was just, as we grow, we would have to create a hub in the area that we're going to expand to, so that it just allows us the ability to drive our food and our products where we need to take them.
Yeah, but that's interesting, because then you'd have to expand into a new type of warehouse situation. Yes. And that's a whole added expense in itself. And then more employees, that's a whole added expense in itself, and a whole other range of issues that comes with that. I'm sure that your vetting processes, because you're a small business, you have to trust the people that are working with you. Otherwise, what's the point? So that's a whole other set of headaches. And then you'd have to hire people to manage those people. And then you're going to need a head of HR and all these other things. And that's, now we're getting into corporate levels of weird. And and then we kind of eliminate almost the vision for the business. That's a lot to take in.
It's a lot to take in. I just feel like I want to get this type of food in front of people. I want to change the way that we think about nutrition for our infants and toddlers. And if that is what it will take, then that's what we are prepared to do. Like, this is beyond us just trying to mass produce to get to a certain number. We really want to affect how kids are reacting to food, to fresh food, to whole food.
Yeah, because right now they're excited about packaged food and sugar, a lot of sugar, and those energy drinks that are really super gross. And that's what would be really nice to actually introduce them. And also, how do we teach kids that it's okay to be experimental with food? And also, you're fine. You can like what you like. It's okay. But I'll make it weird and make it accessible. How do we give them a plethora of food, and not just, whatever culture you live in? Like, here's a bunch of other different types of ethnic dishes. How do we get them there? So I applaud you for pushing forward with this, because this is a huge undertaking. And again, I want to continue to push the conversations on this podcast to talk about the food industry, because I want people to understand what it takes to be a food owner, to understand what it means to be in this space, especially if you mentioned you hit all the bullet points, food safety, distribution, cold storage, cybersecurity incidents. How do I serve my customers? How do I continue to keep my ethics in place and still serve the public? Thank you for what you do. And also, I love that you're working with like the industry in terms of research and understanding nutrients and all that other stuff. I can't even navigate the vitamin aisle. I mean, I do, but like not very successfully, I don't think. And I think that's the problem, is that we've just made it so complicated. I mean, the food system is the most complicated system on the planet, and we did that. But to have to, as an adult now, think about all the different nutrients I'm not getting, and especially as we age and all those other things. But to start it at an early stage and start, people off at the best possible way, and also help them if they're in chronic illness or passing into the next life and all these other things. It's just I just think it's cool. So I hope the listeners think it's cool too, because it's cool. And so thank you very much for being here with us and sharing your story. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Kristin, thank you for inviting me. I am very grateful to sit amongst you and all of your other amazing guests to just share my story. So I really appreciate it. It's an honor.
On today's episode, a huge thank you to Camille for pulling back the curtain on what it really takes to build a food company that also stands for something. And thank you for hanging out with us. If this conversation lit a fire in your creative brain, made you rethink your fridge, or just entertain you on your commute, chores, workout, or whatever you were doing, don't forget to like, share, and drop us a comment. Every click helps this show grow. And as always, stay safe, stay curious, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.